And welcome to another week here in the X Zone. I am Rob McConnell. We're coming to you on one of our very maiden voyages as we keep growing with the Simul TV television network and their radio network, and across and around the world on the X Zone Broadcast Network and the X Zone TV channel. If you'd like to send us an email, it's xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, on all social media sites, X Zone Radio TV. And if you'd like to find out about the programming we have available for you 24/7, 365 on the X Zone Broadcast Network, visit www.xzbn.net. And for our programming on the X Zone TV channel on Simul TV, visit www.simultv.com. X Zone Nation, this hour we're going back in time. We're going to January the 8th, 2008. And we're going to be talking about something that happened in Stephensville. Now, it was January the 8th, as I said, and what was that speed-shifting, color-morphing UFO that mystified hundreds of eyewitnesses around Stephensville on January the 8th, 2008? Was it an optical illusion? Secret military operations? Alien spaceships? The questions still remain. My guest this hour is Ken Cherry. He is the Texas State Director for MUFON. He organized the collection of over 50 reports from witnesses to UFOs in the Stephensville area, some related to the Stephensville sighting on that date of January the 8th, 2008, and some unrelated. Witnesses gathered at the Rotary Club in Dublin, Texas on January the 19th, 2008, accompanied by hundreds of journalists and interested citizens. And Ken is heading up the investigation into these sightings. And Ken, welcome back to the X Zone.
Well, thank you, Rob. Glad to be here.
All right, Ken, so take our listeners back to that night of January the 8th, 2008, and tell us what happened.
The original report came in from a local businessman and private pilot, Steve Allen, who was out one evening on his property with a couple of friends. It was around 6 o'clock in the evening, and they witnessed in the sky something that just was incredible. Steve described this craft that he saw, about a quarter mile wide and a mile long, traveling at approximately 2,000 miles an hour. The two people that were with them, one of them actually was a long-term American airline employee who was very familiar with all types of aircraft, and also confirmed what Steve had reported, and that she had never seen anything like this in all of her career. So they were standing there in amazement discussing what was this we just saw. And then a few minutes later, the thing comes back around, and this time it was being chased by a number of F-16 jets. The witnesses said that at some point it looked like the UFO said, well, I've had enough of this, and just accelerated at such an incredible speed that it just made the jets look like they were standing still, even though they were on afterburners. So Steve, again, as a private pilot, knew how long it had taken him to fly across that same distance on the horizon, and that's where he guesstimated his speed of 2,000 miles an hour for the craft. But at any rate, a couple days later, he went into the small town of Stephensville, Texas, which is pretty well centrally located in Texas. It's a rural community of under 20,000 population. The whole county, the primary industry is dairy farming.
Right.
So it gives you an idea.
Sure.
There is a small college there, but at any rate, he went into the local paper and sat down with a part-time reporter there, Angelia Joyner, and told her what he had seen. And Steve had a great deal of respect and the community, and so they took his story seriously and printed it. The day that came out, I received a a call from Angela K. Brown, who was an AP reporter I'd worked with a number of times. And she asked me about the sighting, was it credible, what did we plan to do about it as MUFON, as an organization. And I told her, yes, we had received quite a few reports from credible folks, and actually over about a 3-county area. So once she put that out on the AP wires, of course, it went international, and the feedback, I mean, was just absolutely amazing. The interest came in from all over the world, and so we had so many witnesses calling after that. My name and number were in the newspapers and the media, and so the only way we could actually deal with that many witnesses was to get this Rotary Club location there in Dublin, and by the time we got there, the place was just packed with media from as far away as Japan and Europe and New York and California. So there was an amazing amount of interest in this story. But anyway, I can go into some of the witness accounts, but I think at that point, that is really had a major impact on our investigation, with so much interest from the public and from the media for months after that. It didn't really wane in a few days like the military had hoped it would.
Now, what is the final result of an investigation that was done by the government as to what happened in Stephensville and what was actually seen?
Well, there is actually, Stephensville is right in the epicenter of a number of large military bases. As a matter of fact, the largest military base in the world is located within a few miles, and then there's a joint naval air base nearby. And their official disclaimer was that there were no sightings on their radar of any unusual objects, and no, they didn't have any F-16s in the area that evening. So that was their official explanation until we were able to obtain radar proof that the F-16s were there and that there was a very large object in the area at the time that Steve Allen and other witnesses reported it. They also tried another explanation that what people were had seen was two large airliners that were in close proximity, and that they created an optical illusion. Of course, the fact that people were reporting from 3 different counties around seeing the same object and describing it in the same manner blows the theory of one angle creating an optical illusion.
Right.
So, no, we never got anything but obfuscation from the military. They, it was deny, even though we had the proof. They did come out later and fess up that they had aircraft, but they were just out training, and we just forgot about them. So, right.
You said you had proof. What kind of proof did you have?
We conducted one thing that the public is not aware of is that this unidentified object came back numerous times over the course of the entire year, and it was viewed by many, many credible witnesses.
Were there any photos taken of it?
No, there weren't any photos. There were people who purported to have photos that we looked at. There was one case that was really blown up by the local newspaper and by the local reporter. Ricky Sorrells claimed to have viewed one over his property through the scope on his
all right, Ken, we're going to have to do a bit of a cliffhanger here. I've got to take a commercial break. Exo Nation, Ken Cherry's our guest. The website to visit is mufon.org, and we'll be back on the other side of this commercial break as we continue here in the X Zone from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton on TV. And we're going to continue talking about the Stephensville UFO with Ken. So don't go anywhere. www.xzoneradiotv.com is our website. X-Zone, let me see, the X-Zone TV channel for our broadcast TV channel, and of course the X-Zone Broadcast Network, xzbn.net. I'm Rob McConnell. We'll be back. Don't go away. Ken Cherry's our guest, X-Zone Nation, www.mufon.org. We're talking about the events of January the 8th, 2008, when something in the skies over Stephensville, Texas, caused a number of UFO reports to be filed. Apparently, the United States government said at first they had no F-16s in the air, but apparently changed their story when it was found out, according to the government, that they did have training flights in progress. So, and Ken, when did the gentleman sit down with the reporter? What was the date on that again?
January the 10th. I believe that's when the story came out, January the 10th of 2008.
And when did MUFON get their first report?
Well, we had been receiving a high number of reports through the month of December. Normally, that is not a very active month for reports.
No, I mean, when did MUFON get the first report pertaining to the Stephensville sighting?
You'd have to define that because, as I said...
All right, let me define it. When did MUFON receive the first report of the sighting that we are talking about tonight? On January the 8th.
Oh, of Steve Allen's report. Yeah, September the 10th was the first that I heard about it.
Okay, but when did Steve Allen file his report after the main sighting?
He saw it on the 8th. I believe he came in on like the 9th, and it was printed on the 10th. And I heard about it almost immediately at that point. But we were already sending a team down there to investigate, as I said, because we already had quite a few reports from that area. So Steve was just one of quite a few credible witnesses. I don't want to overemphasize his. That's
right.
The one that hit the media.
Oh, okay, so you had all these witnesses who saw something in the skies. They could not understand or identify what it was. There was military traffic in the airspace. All these witnesses, no pictures.
Well, as I was explaining with Ricky Sorrells, he did come into our meeting and he said that he had pictures on his cell phone. We took a look at them, but it could have been the sun, shining through the clouds. There was just no definition. So that was not something that we could base anything on. There was another case, David Carone was a gentleman there who claimed to have video of this UFO that he had taken from his front porch, and it made quite a splash. It was on all the media, locally, nationally, and so forth, and was up, I think Linda Moulton Howe got a copy of it and put it on her site and claimed that these hieroglyphic color-changing type symbols that were purportedly this UFO were alien attempts to communicate with us. But we were able to actually ended up having to purchase the camera and the video from Mr. Carone and go out and do an investigation and determine that what this was actually a shaky view of the star Sirius. And that got us a lot of heat because there were many, many believers everywhere who had invested a lot, of their own and reputations into supporting the notion that this was a UFO.
Sure. Is it normal? Is it normal for MUFON to buy video and cameras off of witnesses?
No, it is not.
Then why was it done this time?
Let me clarify this. What happened was that the UFO hunters offered to assist my investigation, and they brought in quite a few resources that weren't available to us through MUFON. And in the course of this zoo that was taking place there in Stephensville, with so many reporters in town from so many big media outfits, they were offering money for evidence, and so that suddenly everything had a price tag on it. And since there was such a buzz about this David Carone video, the UFO hunter says, "Look, he's wanting money." They came to me through an intermediary down there and said, "I'll arrange a meeting with you, but he wants X dollars." And the other people were offering to pay him, and so the UFO hunter says, "We'll pay it,"
And you're talking about the UFO Hunter TV show, right?
Correct. Dave Pavoni and the whole crew.
And how much did they pay for the camera and video?
I guess I could tell you now, because it's been long enough, but it was $10,000.
Okay.
So, but they bought exclusive rights to it, and certain people had spread this around, and they had to, approach them all and, tell them to take down the video. But it is the exclusive. But at any rate, we had Bruce Maccabee, who's optical scientist, come in, and he checked the camera and checked the video and so forth, and verified, we verified that that's what it was, actually just a shaky video of the Star Series.
Wow. So why did you guys eat heat about that?
Well, the local reporter down there had attracted quite a following by printing these outlandish stories, as she actually was able to convince them to run a few that, and once they got blowback on these stories and we began to, disprove them, her editor got upset with her and said, "Look, we're not a tabloid, so we're going to stop." But at any rate, she had quite a sympathetic following at the time. And, they had invested quite a lot in believing that this was real, that they had uncovered something. And it was nonsense, as were most of the other stories that appeared. And so when she was given the ultimatum to stop, writing these stories, stop investigating it, or quit, she quit, and then the whole story went out. She was fired. They were trying to suppress the information.
So the conspiracy theorists had a ball.
Oh, absolutely. It was just amazing. And there were a lot of good people who were sucked in. There was a trooper down there that had been the bodyguard for, 6 different governors who reported seeing this UFO, and it was printed as if it was gospel because of the man's, standing and integrity. But anybody, including a person who was a part-time reporter that was a high school science teacher, could have just taken a sky map online and figured out from the exact coordinates that the man gave and the time that it was in alignment of
My goodness. So what did this do to any investigation that had anything to do with the Stephensville UFO sighting?
It made it exceptionally difficult. We had so many people who were coming forward with all these bogus stories. It was like trying to, fight our way through the jungle to get, to the real gem. We learned a lot from that January portion of the investigation. So whenever there was a mass sighting again in October, we did our best to keep it from the media and keep the local newspapers and everybody out of it. But that proved to be one of the best investigation we had, I guess the most solid investigation we were able to do. We came up with an 87% correlation between the witness reports, time and place, and our radar data.
But you still don't know. But you still don't know what it was.
No, but amazingly, we had 3 police officers there who were in different locations around Stephensville on the same shift.
Right.
And when they came back to the station, I guess they're, going through their clocking out thing, and they're talking. One of them says, "You won't believe what I saw." And the other one said, "No, you won't believe what I saw."
Go on.
So then the third one chimes in, and they all realize from their discussion that they have seen the same thing. And they had been concerned about reporting it because, you have to be expert witnesses in court and so forth and so on. It's a small community.
Sure.
You don't want their credibility hurt.
But if
at any rate,
if the 3 police officers saw this, wouldn't have citizens also saw this and called the police department?
I mean, we got so many reports, it's hard to sort out that timeline of...
Well, wouldn't a simple call to the police station saying, "Did you receive any reports of an unknown object in the sky between, let's say, 8 o'clock at night and 10 o'clock at night on January the 8th, 2008?
Rob, I'm sure that happened because the sheriff's department and I'm sure the police department were inundated with calls from people saying, "What the heck is this?"
So why would the 3 police officers be hesitant about filing their reports?
Because there was starting to be a circus atmosphere about this whole thing, and they didn't want to be ridiculed,
So if they don't report something like that, what else don't they report?
Well, I don't want to get into the weeds on that. I think it's a little bit different when a person in blue doesn't want to say, "Hey, I saw a UFO while I was out."
Listen, Ken, we've got to take our news break, but I'll tell you something. As a former police officer myself, I think it's disgusting and despicable that members in blue do not report the truth of what they see. It's either they saw it. Wait a sec. It's either they saw it or they didn't. Black and white.
Right.
We'll be back after the news. Don't go away. Exo Nation, Exo Nation, Ken Cherry is my guest this hour. We're talking about this sighting of something in the skies over Stephensville, Texas, going back to January the 8th, 2008. Ken is the Texas State Director from MUFON, and their website is mufon.org.
Hey, Rob, if I could finish my thought there.
Yeah,
with
sure.
The 3 police,
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Sure.
And by the way, I'm the former Texas State Director at the time this took place. But at any rate, to finish my thought on that, once they realized all 3 of them had seen the same thing, they did come forward, although anonymously, so we couldn't use their names. But the one thing they did was use, I guess it was sort of a draftsman's program or something, to sit down and come up with a composite picture of what they all saw that they all agreed on.
Right.
And they, like every other witness that we had, they described this as being absolutely enormous. And I mean, some of our witnesses said this thing was as big as a super Walmart. Others said, it was X number of times the size of a battleship and so forth and so on. But one of the officers said, I was sitting out on this road number, whatever it was, Lonely Road, with a radar gun checking for speeders, and he said everything just went quiet. It was just no crickets, nothing. It was just, and he said I kind of looked around and I looked up, and there was this absolutely enormous craft just looming just overhead. And he said I was just dumbfounded. I was sitting in my car. And he said, I didn't want to break the silence opening my door. I just pointed my radar gun at it. And he said the first indication I got was like 16 miles an hour, and then boom, it was gone. I mean, it didn't even read. But what they all saw and reported, along with many of our witnesses, was just absolutely stunning. And of course, sometimes it takes a moment to gather your wits about some of these things. But they did come forward. We just couldn't use when we put them on TV or quoted them. We couldn't use their face's name. But we did have a constable that came forward, and he was subject to constant scrutiny by the media. And there were a number of sheriff's deputies who wouldn't come forward. There was city councilman, the who's who of the local communities around there saw it. But one thing I want to emphasize, these were older people. All of our witnesses were not the college students there in town. As a matter of fact, I can't recall one college student. These were all what I call the gray-haired set.
So what does that have to do with the sighting?
Well, it has to do with the credibility of the witnesses. And one of the things that makes this such an important sighting is the fact that we had so many solid citizens who, came forward, and they didn't know each other. They lived, a county, 2-3 counties away in some cases.
Right.
And they were all saying the same thing, so that makes it extremely significant.
But they were all saying the same thing, Ken, and I can understand what you're getting at when it comes to the age of the witness compared to maybe some other cases that MUFON has investigated. But my concerns are, number one, there's no photographic evidence. Number one, all these people with all these sightings that happened prior to to January, no photographs. Number two, did you say that MUFON investigated a case that they did not advise the media about because they did not want it to be the circus that Stephensville turned out to be?
It was reported later, but we didn't have any obligation to go to the newspaper and say, hey, we're here in town investigating a case.
Then why did you guys go? Then why did you guys let the newspaper know and get involved with the UFO hunters and pay $10,000 for a camera and video if you're going to be choosy about what cases that you talk about openly to the media and what cases that you keep away from them?
Well, first of all, we didn't have anything to do with the media's involvement in any of our cases. They usually come in as a result of hearing about these things.
Right, okay.
So we didn't invite them in. They were a hindrance in every case because, reporters do not have the experience to do investigations, and they come to, rash conclusions, as was demonstrated time and time again there in Stephenville with the local reporter. So, no, we didn't invite them in. We don't typically. We have investigated thousands of cases that we didn't invite the media or to.
Okay.
But we do publish our results. I mean, there's a website, and all of the cases are public.
So you don't have to be a member of MUFON, pay an amount of money in order to get access to those files?
I don't know what they do now, but they used to be available online.
Okay.
So, this is a nonprofit organization that is established for the benefit of mankind for the study of UFOs.
Yeah.
So, no, they publish their stuff.
Okay, let's get. So, what has the final conclusion been about the alleged UFO from another planet over Stephensville?
Well, no one is claiming that it was from another planet. UFO just means unidentified flying object, as you know.
Yeah.
But there was something solid there that was traveling at enormous rates of speed, that was making, moves, twists and turns and so forth that are not indicative of conventional aircraft. And, it outran our best technology at the time. It wasn't transponding. Many, many people saw it. It didn't look anything like any known craft, and it was much larger than anything that. So, the only thing you can say is that there is something there that the military does not control, can't control.
Or that they're not willing to admit that is there, that they are not willing to admit that they control.
Yeah, Rob, we'd have to do a whole other show to get into that, because my personal investigation went on for well over a year past this. And part of the reason is because, or the opportunity that came to me as a result of this thing being in, I had 3 network trucks in front of my house at one time. I had the phone ringing day and night for months from reporters all over the world, from Australia, you name it. And as a result of all of that publicity I was getting, I made a number of contacts, people that contacted me that said, look, I can't talk about this because I'm under secrecy oath, but you need to know this. And I talked to scientists, 3 scientists from S4, from Area 51. I talked to NASA scientists, NSA, CIA, Homeland Security.
All right. So what was the conclusion?
Well, that there is a secret program going on.
Well, we all know that. That's no secret.
We all know that,
yeah.
And that this was part of a long-term disclosure program, and that it was exotic technology that we have back in Geneva.
Oh, come on, Ken. You really don't believe that.
Of course I do.
Oh, come on. Come on. If that is the case, why are we still using solid rocket propellants, and why is it taking us so damn long to get to Mars? Come on.
That's a darn good question,
yeah.
And that's because that there are powerful people in the government who don't want the unwashed public to have access to this stuff.
Are you a conspiracy theorist?
No, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I have talked to people that are very high up in these secret programs that I believe, and I've seen some of them get knocked off. So, there's been a program going on. I talked to one gentleman who was high up in the CIA. He said he was in a 3-man council that made the final budget approvals for black budget projects. One year they came to him, to the 3 of them, and presented the budget. He said, "We're not going to sign this. This is too much money." And he said, "So there's no oversight, nothing. We don't know where it's going." So he said the general takes them to this enormous hangar. He didn't tell me where, but he said they opened this hangar and went in there, and he said there were all sizes of flying saucers. And the general turns to him and said, "That's where the money's going." And this was in the early 60s that this occurred. So we've had this secret space program for so long. You think we're just flying this stuff around in the atmosphere? But listen, I called this man Uncle. I knew him like a brother. I mean, like an uncle.
Did you meet him in person? Did you meet him in person?
Absolutely.
Did you see his credentials?
I know him.
That's not what I asked you. Did you see his credentials?
Well, you don't ask somebody you know.
But how do you know he just wasn't spinning a yarn?
Well, as you know, when you get information from one person, you write that down. Okay? And then you get information of a similar nature from another person, another source. Then, you have several credible people who are giving you information that triangulates, pretty much the same. And then it's called, additional sources. I mean, so if you got 2 or 3 sources for a story, then it has some credibility.
But it's hearsay, and it's hearsay evidence until you actually see some evidence. It's hearsay.
Sure. Okay. Well, then, I'm presenting my investigations as honestly as I can. If you ask me if I was taken to see all these flying saucers, I would say no. But do I know this man was credible, and did I visit with him in D.C., and do I know who he was, and was he who he said he was? Yes.
We'll be back on the other side of this break. Don't go away. Ken Cherry's our guest this hour, Exonation. He is the state director of MUFON. That's the Mutual UFO Network. Their website is www.mufon.org. And we're talking about something that happened over the skies of Stephensville, Texas, going back to January the 8th in the year 2008. Nobody knows what it was. A lot of witnesses. No pictures of anything except one shaky video and one photo on a cell phone that turned out to be anything else but a UFO. According to our guest this hour, it was a media circus. And what were some of the witnesses, the reports that you took going to the meeting on January the 19th at the Rotary Club? What were some of the witnesses saying?
Yeah. Hey, Rob, while we got a moment here, let me mention that if you're interested in my book, it's Mark Slade Investigates the Stephensville UFO. I had to write it as a novel because there were people who said, hey, I would lose my job, my career, or even my life if you expose my name. So,
all right, we'll make sure that gets notice.
Yeah.
Okay,
thanks.
so let's get back on to my question about what happened in the Rotary Club in Stephensville.
Well, we had 75 witnesses or so there the first meeting, outnumbered by about 5 to 1 by the media. But we had a number of people who had been former military, retired pilots. One was actually a design engineer for aircraft who worked at the local, what do you call it? Anyway, the contractor here. It used to be General Dynamics that made the aircraft. But at any rate, all of these people agreed that this was a very large object. It made no sound. A number of cases, the people were out walking their dogs, and the dogs seemed to be aware of it before them. One case, the gentleman had a very large dog that crawled underneath a pickup nearby. So something about this must have been generating some unheard, unseen type of a signal, at least that the animals were picking up. But that was it. A number of people drew pictures of the object, somewhat similar, but they were all agreed in that it was large and silent. Now, I must say, that's not the media sort of dubbed this thing as the mothership, but there were quite a few other sightings of sort of globe-type things, orbs that people reported. One gentleman said it was as bright as an acetylene torch, but generated no heat. It was apparently came down very close to his automobile. Extremely intense light, no sound, no heat. Those were seen by quite a number of people, either singly or in groups. Sometimes they would just start out as one, then split into several, or several would combine into one. So, I guess they call those like probes now, whatever the media got into. But at any rate, all of those types of reports were pretty consistent. We had some interesting witnesses there that there was an elderly couple well up in their 80s that said, we've lived here in this area for, since we were kids and married for, I think they were close to 60 years married.
Wow.
And they said about 50 years ago, we were driving into Stephenville, on our weekly trip to buy groceries and so forth, and come back to our place. It was dark, and as we were pulling into our driveway, of course, there was no lights up there or anything. There was this incredible bright light over the end of our drive, which was about a quarter mile down the drive to their home. And they said, the car just stopped, and this thing just hovered there over right over us. And we looked at it and said, after a moment, it shot down the driveway, hovered over our home, like, here's your house, and then took off at a 90-degree angle and then straight up, once it got to a tree line into the air. And they said, we couldn't go into town and tell everybody what we had seen. They would say we're crazy. People back then would have just laughed at us. So that was one good thing, or big change that I had noticed about the Stephensville events, was that people were much more willing to come out and talk. So I guess you would say, with all the media attention, it did have that one beneficial effect, is that people, it turns out, have been seeing, UFOs around there for many, many years. As a matter of fact, the one of the local city councilmen found in an archive there a story in an old newspaper, I think it was 1898, of a UFO. So turns out, there's been activity in that area for quite a while.
So I would imagine that the city or the town of Stephensville has made some money on this.
Oh, listen, that was by profession, I was an economist and financial advisor. So one of the things that I find some joy in is looking at these stats on sales tax returns. And so generally January is a pretty low month on sales tax returns. As you can imagine, people have spent all their money for Christmas, and so they're not really spending anything for. But January sales tax for Erath County went through the roof. I mean, there were so many visitors there from out of town.
Isn't that amazing?
The local high school, the kids made a T-shirt they sold. I think they raised $10,000 for scholarship. Another couple said that they sold T-shirts they made. Made $15,000 in 2 or 3 weeks.
So, and then you've got the different businesses in town that made money: the hospitality industry, the food and beverage industry.
Taco Bell had a sign out that says UFOs can park in there.
So it's almost sounds as if it's a cross between the Phoenix Lights, Close Encounters of a Third Kind, and that the city of Stephensville wanted to do the same thing that Roswell, New Mexico does, and that's make money.
I would say that all the local businesses took advantage of the fact that there were a lot of visitors in January when business would have normally been pretty slim, yeah.
So how do we know that this wasn't concocted as a publicity stunt?
Well, I don't think you can concoct a solid object on radar that's traveling.
I'm not talking about the object. The object probably is real. It could be an experimental aircraft. Well, how do we know that the city and the media, not the international media, but the local media, Angelina Joyner, for example, that this was just embellished in order to create business in a very dead period of time? It worked. Because before this event, nobody knew of Stephensville. No one.
Of course. No, nobody.
I understand they've got a statue of a cow in the center of town. So this, I'm telling you, it's something smells very fishy with this whole story. Very fishy.
I was very critical of the media hype involved. Matter of fact, I had a number of discussions with the editor there of the Tribune, and she had just come in from San Francisco to take over running of the newspaper. And once she got a hold of the situation, she called us a halt to it because it didn't matter. They were selling record numbers of newspapers, but she said, "That's all. I don't care. I don't want the reputation of the newspaper sullied." And so that's when she put her foot down. And of course, Angelia and all of her followers were up in arms that she was being, censored. But that wasn't the case.
Anyway, Ken, I'm sorry we've run out of time for tonight. And Exo Nation, Ken Cherry is the state director for MUFON. I don't know what else to say about that. I still don't believe the story. I still don't. Something stinks with the whole story. All these people making claims that they saw whatever it was in the sky. And wow, what do you know? No photos. And to find out that MUFON does investigations and they are only giving the media the information that they want to give the media, that I think is despicable. I don't have a very high opinion of MUFON anyway. The entire way the investigation was handled, if the government is doing something, big deal. We don't need to know everything the government is doing. The only people who really care about what the government is doing are those people who have something to hide. They're afraid the government is going to find out something that they're doing, so they want it to shut down. Too bad. It sucks to be you if that's what the real truth is. Personally, I sleep very well at night knowing there's men and women around the world sitting in jet fighters willing to give their life for my freedom, democracy, and my way of life. I'll be back on the other side of this break as we continue here in the X Zone from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Sorry, Stephensville, you're a washout. I'm Rob McConnell. Don't go away.